Good evening, everyone. My name is Dror Yahav. I'm very happy to host you on this special evening. Before I introduce our special guest tonight, I would like to speak about our broadcasting host, Nehora. Nehora is a Jewish center right in the middle of the city in Ramat Gan. It offers Jewish studies programs for beginners and for novice, for Baalei Chuva, and for those who want to be Baalei Chuva, for men and for women. Our Bet Midrash is open for everyone. It is very halachic, yet it has a liberated Israeli Hasidic atmosphere. I invite our Israeli viewers to visit us during the holidays and, of course, around the year. So tonight, we will host two very special people. Rabbi Manis Friedman, Hasid, Shaliach, rabbi, author, social philosopher, and public speaker. He's the dean of the Beis Chana Institute of Jewish Studies in Minnesota, and officially the most popular rabbi on YouTube, not only by Jews. If you look at the comments below many of the videos on YouTube, you will find many non-Jews that really love his wisdom. It's very inspiring to read their comments. Rabbi Friedman encourages both secular and religious people to shake off fixed religious thought and demand the inner and eternal meaning of life. I'm sure that you will find it very, very precise when you will hear him right immediately. With whom we'll be speaking Dr. Elad Ben Elul, an anthropologist, filmmaker, writer, and one of the most enthusiastic students of Rabbi Friedman. He is now working on a new book of Rabbi Friedman's ideas that will be published soon around Hanukkah, Be'ezrat Hashem. Before we begin, I want to tell you how I got to know Elad and Rabbi Friedman. More than a year ago, I came across some very professional YouTube videos of Rabbi Friedman that were translated into Hebrew and became viral. Since I write and teach about Judaism in many programs, I love their inspiring message from the first look. I didn't know that Elad and Yosef Brauman were those who made these wonderful works. As I became more familiar with Rabbi Friedman's ideas, I realized that he holds a very special way of thinking, which makes accessible the deepest and the most meaningful ideas of Hasidut, in a simple and accessible language for everyone and every soul. A few months ago, thanks to a mutual friend, Elad contacted me and invited me to take part in the preparation and editing of Rabbi Manis' new book, which Elad has been working for a long time. It is a great privilege for me to be a part of such an exciting project, which I believe that will have a great impact on the way that Israelis get and think about the Judaism today. So enough words from my side. I hope that this will be the beginning of a new tradition, a new fascinating way of Rabbi Friedman's and the Elad Mutual Talks on our channel. I wish you all Gmar Chatima Tova, and gentlemen, the court is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dror, for a wonderful introduction. And I have to say, it's super exciting that the three of us are doing this with the three corners of the triangle of the upcoming book, each one which is with his own unique contribution. And also we're in a triangle of cities, I think. I think Rabbi Friedman is in New York. It's close to 770, right? You're in the heart of Israel, central Israel, and I'm in Tzfat, in the Kabbalah Center. So it's just crazy how COVID-19 has brought those possibilities to create those encounters and meetings across cities, across lands, and talk about Hasidus and talk about life. And so yeah, you were mentioning that the center of Nehora is a center for Baalei Chuva, and we're in the 10 days of doing chuva. So it's the right time for this center. So I was, Rabbi Friedman and I have many talks about chuva. So yeah, I'm passing over to Rabbi Friedman to talk about this issue of Baalei Tshuva, the 10 days of Tshuva, and Yom Kippur coming up tomorrow.
So let's start with the biggest surprise and the biggest shock. Many years ago, one of the most famous Hasidim of the past generation, Reb Mendel Futterfass, finally was allowed to leave Russia. After defeating the communists, because they couldn't break him in 8 years of prison and torture, they couldn't break him, and they finally allowed him to leave and to join his family in England. Of course, one of the first things he did was come to New York to see the Rebbe, whom he had never seen. We were sitting, I was in the yeshiva then, we were sitting in the Beit Medrash, and he walked in. And we heard about him. He was a hero. He was bigger than life. He was a real chassid from the old style. He came in, he sits down on the bench next to us, and he says, what are you learning? What are you busy with? And he took a look at the ma'amar that we were studying, and he saw the words, cheshbon nefesh. He says, you're learning about cheshbon nefesh. How do you do a cheshbon nefesh? We waited for him to answer the question. He says, no, come on. Like on Yom Kippur, you do a cheshbon nefesh, right? Yeah. No, how do you do it? We waited for him to answer. He said, you on Yom Kippur, you sit and you remind yourself of the sins that you committed in Cheshvan, and all the sins you committed in Kislev, and you go through the whole year, and you do chuva for all those sins. We said, yeah. He said, feh, disgusting. Like, what? He says, on the holiest day of the year, the entire kehillah comes together, puts on white clothing to look like an angel, and then you sit for 24 hours thinking about sins? Feh! We were so shocked. And he's so right. He says, this is how you become better? By wallowing in unholy memories for an entire day? With a minion? I love that. So we said, no, so what is a cheshbon hanefesh? He says on Yom Kippur, the cheshbon nefesh is, God put up with you in Cheshvan, and God put up with you in Kislev, and God tolerated you in Tevet, and what did you do for him? That's cheshbon hanefesh. So you spend the entire day, Yom Kippur, thinking about how much God puts up with, how much he tolerated you, how good he was to you. And then by Ne'ilah, you say, and how was I to him? That's cheshbon hanefesh. What a different picture. So, first let's talk a little bit about chuva itself. The phenomenon of Baalei chuva. You meet people and they tell you, I am a Baal chuva. This is a fantastic phenomenon, something that probably never happened before in history on such a large scale, that people who were not observant, not Shomrei Mitzvot, become. And they call it Baalei Tshuva. It was very exciting when it started in the 60s, when it really became big, in the 60s and the 70s, a little bit in the 80s. It was a wild and crazy time. And the Rebbe said about these people that they are unique nishamot. And they were able to make this drastic, crazy change in their lives from 0 to 60, from 0 to 100. Almost literally overnight. So then we started schools for Baalei Tshuva. Yeshivot for men, yeshivot for women. The Beit Chana program was all for Baalei Tshuva. But something has changed. There's something new happening that we have to appreciate and keep up with. Because every year something new is brought into the world. To become a Baal Tshuva means that you were part of the mainstream reality. You found that there's something missing there. It's empty. It's a dead-end street, goes nowhere, brings you nowhere. So you leave the mainstream and you become a member in a special group, a group called Baalei Tshuva. Now you're not mainstream anymore. Now you're special, unique, which is wonderful, but it's not good enough. What's happening in the world today is emes me'eretz titzmach. The truth is simply becoming visible and obvious, coming from the earth, not from heaven. People wake up and realize, I'm a Jew, I should be a Jew. There's a God, there's a creator, I can't ignore him. They're not becoming a special group. The mainstream is introducing God into the mainstream. You don't go off and change your lifestyle and dress differently and lose all your friends and some of your family. That's not the way it's happening today. Today, it is mainstream to serve God. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha does not mean you have to go off and become a member in a special group, or that you have to change your life to become something different. The opposite. Not change yourself from mainstream, change the mainstream into something more godly for everybody. That's called a grassroots movement.
You know, Rabbi, it's so refreshing because we had a very popular a documentary TV series running this year. And it was about people who did chuva and they lost touch with their closest members, like even a twin, a mother. They, in a sense, they don't even know where they are. And they brought like journalists and a crew, and they wanted to reconnect them. And they took like the secular family member into the heart of like the ghetto, and they saw how they're looking for them and they're shocked that everything is so different, and then they find them and they didn't speak for 20 years and they making them talk together. And I watched it and I kept thinking, okay, it's a message of union, it's a message of building bridges, but at the same time, it reinforces this sense of like, there's them and there's us, and it's two separate worlds and it's untouchable, and therefore we must bring the journalists and the cameras and the dramatic music to connect us. And it felt for me like it doesn't speak to my experience, which is what you're saying. It's something that we are a different wave where we kind of remain who we are, where we are. We introduce godliness to our own neighborhood, to our own family, to our own unique identities. And that's a completely different way of looking at things. But the media is not up to date.
That would also involve compromise. How do you bring together people who are so different in their beliefs? How are they supposed to get along? Compromise.
Counseling, there was loads of professionals there, psychologists, a coacher. It was very hard to bring it together. And yeah, lots and lots of compromise.
So, the holiday of Purim is considered in some way holier than Yom Kippur. Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippur is like Purim, but not as holy. Of course, we always refer to Yom Kippur as the holiest day of the year. And yet it's Kippurim. It's almost as holy as Purim. How does that make sense? So in a very simple approach, in order to have Yom Kippur, you have to stop eating. You have to put on special garments, in this case, white, but something special. Big day Shabbat, big day Yom Tov. You can't do any of the normal activities. It's Shabbat, Shabbaton. Everything's forbidden. That allows you to experience the holiness of the day. In other words, on Yom Kippur, godliness comes into the world more than any other day. But for you to be able to connect to that, you have to stop all your workday activities. You cannot go about business as usual. You have to change your eating habits, your dress habits, your work habits, everything. Then maybe you can feel the holiness of Yom Kippur. On Purim, the exact opposite. Don't change anything. You're allowed to do work and you're allowed to eat. In fact, eat more, drink more. And yet, it's not an ordinary day. The idea is that there's a certain kind of Kedusha that has limits. In order to approach this Kedusha, there are certain restrictions. Only certain people, only if you behave a certain way, you have to make preparations. You have a whole month before Yom Kippur comes. You have Rosh Hashanah, you have the days in between. A lot of preparation. And even then, who knows whether you really get to experience Yom Kippur. That's not a fault in the people. That's a limit on the Kedusha. It's a kind of Kedusha that can only exist in certain circumstances, in certain contexts. like the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Until Mashiach comes, it's very limited. One tiny little country is Eretz HaKodesh, the rest of the world is not. Which means that the Kedusha that we now have in Eretz HaKodesh is limited. It can't overcome, it can't shine through the darkness of Golah. When Mashiach comes, that Kedusha will be magnified, and it will shine through everything, and it will be felt all over the world. The same is true with Purim. On Purim, there is a certain kind of Kedusha. God makes himself available, and it doesn't matter what you're wearing, what you're eating, how you're behaving, nothing gets in the way. Because it is so bright, it is coming from such a core, essential place within God himself. God has no limits, so this Kedusha has no limits. In fact, it does the opposite. The weekday activities and the weekday clothing and the food that you eat and so on, not only doesn't it get in the way, it also becomes Kedusha. That's how powerful the Kedusha of Purim is. In today's world, unlike the 60s, 70s, 80s, the Kedusha that was available then had certain limits. If you live in mainstream, you won't get it. It didn't reach the mainstream. If you want it, you have to separate yourself, dedicate yourself, change yourself, and then you can feel the Kedusha of the Baal Chuva. Today, the Kedusha is increased. People who have no intentions of becoming a Baal Chuva, but he will go to a synagogue, he'll go to a minyan on Yom Kippur. Why? He doesn't know why. Oh, you're becoming religious? No. You're changing your life? No. So what do you do?
It connects to the video that how I got to know you. So the first video, it just jumped on YouTube because what you're saying is also about digital technology. This allows it. But the first video I saw, a rabbi with a beard and this, don't be religious. Why you shouldn't be religious? I'm going to tell this story a lot, but then I was like, how is he saying don't be religious? And for me, being about chuva wasn't so much like a possibility. It wasn't a potential. It's something maybe one day you kind of, it's like a fantasy. It's too distant. And don't be religious. And then I saw that it's really about figuring out what is real, what is truth, and also what you're describing here is what is your center of attention. So if I'm getting it correctly, in Purim, the center of attention is not so much you, it's life. It's the mere celebration of life and existence. But in those days, in Kippur, there's a lot of pressure that puts us as the center of attention. 40 days, you have to do cheshbon nefesh, you have to think, and then for 10 days you have to really think and go avodah pnimit, you have to do inner work, you have to really dive in, look into your past, look into your sins, so then you become the center of attention. But the question is, how can we maybe bring some of that Purim energy into tomorrow's Kippurim, and how do we really not make us the center of attention, but still not, we can't cancel all of the instructions that we are told, and all of the idea behind the 10 days of tshuva, the prayers, the words. So how can we get in tune with it in a different way?
So we start off the entire tefillot of Yom Kippur. We start off with the statement, Onu matirim lehispalel im hoavaryonim, because l'chol ha'om bishgaga. Right away, we start off saying, wait a minute, this is not personal. This is inclusive, not exclusive. We are all sinful, and we all deserve to be forgiven. It's not personal. The world needs, God's plan needs forgiveness. And God wants to forgive. He invented Yom Kippur. So it's not about me. The Baal Tshuva, like you say, is very aware of himself. I don't do that. I don't eat that anymore. I keep this, I keep that. I am machmir, and it's very much me. And that's why I can't tolerate you. Because I am not like you. I am not what I used to be. So you can't come to my house because you might bring a non-kosher candy or something. So many years ago in Minnesota, a young boy from the Reform temple went to Eretz Yisrael. Somebody at the kotel found him, schlepped him off to a yeshiva, and overnight he became a Baal Tshuva.
Overnight.
Overnight. He was a teenager. He comes home, and on Friday night, he says to his mother, I forgot to call my friend to tell him that I can't come to his house tonight. Would you please call him? Because for me, it's Shabbat.
For me.
Yes. And his mother, who was very Reform all her life, something didn't sound right. She didn't know exactly what, but that didn't sound right. He is not allowed to call because he's Jewish. But I'm allowed to call. No, something's wrong. So they started to come to Chabad, and they got their life together and worked it out. But what kind of message is that? I'm about Tshuva, so I don't work on Shabbat. You're not about Tshuva, so you can work on Shabbat. That's what Shabbat is? It's a personal experience? That is so far from the truth. It's not just everybody is obligated. If you're Jewish, you're obligated to observe Shabbat. That's not the point. The point is Shabbat is different. The day is different. The world is different. The energy is different. God is different. We got to keep up. Stay in touch. That's why it applies to all Jews. Not because every Jew has to become different. The world is different. Try to keep up. Stay in touch. So this is what Yom Kippur really is. It's not personal. It's a good thing that if there is a particular sin that you feel bad about and you want to clear your conscience, so you mention it. That's personal. That's not written in the text of the tefillah. The formal official prayers are collective, not individual. And what is it that we're really hoping for? And this is really a radical change. What we're really hoping for is, where are all the Jews who are not here in the Bet Knesset? That's the problem. Yom Kippur is so amazing and it's so powerful and it's so great. Why am only I enjoying it? Where is everybody else? Why doesn't everybody know? V'yeda kol pa'ul ki ato pa'alto. V'yavin kol yitzur ki ata yitzah. Just the Frumies? Just the Orthodox, the Haredim? That's terrible. Yom Kippur is not a limited Kedusha just for Haredim. So that's why, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're not threatened by people who are not. You're not intolerant of people who are not. You're all in the same boat. Your biggest prayer is that those who don't know yet should discover it. Should not be a secret. So if you'll never talk to them and you'll never interact with them, how are they going to find out? So instead of running away and creating a special community somewhere with only Haredi people or Dati people, do the opposite. You have something you really believe is good and valuable and true? Don't stop talking about it to your friends, to your family. Why should they not have what you have? And if they don't have what you have, then God doesn't have what he wants. Nothing is working if it's just you.
That's really the issue about whether you're self-serving or you're God-serving. So your chuva can really serve you, because suddenly you're living a very interesting life. You're getting access to loads of culture, lots of inspiring information. Your life is in order. So it serves you in many places. But the switch is to be God-serving. And it also connects. I was thinking about, how do we say sorry in Yom Kippur? How do we say slicha? And I was thinking how there are I'm hearing two types of slicha. Because let's say a kid was misbehaving, and then he wants something. He wants like a toy, he wants a candy, and then his mother is telling him, you misbehaved, so you're not getting this candy. So then he says, slicha, I'm really, really sorry. And he's crying, and I'm sorry, and I will never do this again. But all that is driving him is that he wants to get the candy. He wants to get the blessing, he wants to get... So he's crying and he's saying slicha, and he's generally saying slicha, but actually he's stuck within himself in his slicha. He can for 24 hours say slicha to his mother, but what motivates him is to get the candy. Then I was imagining, what if this kid was walking into his mother's room and finding her crying because her kid is misbehaving, because she's failing as a mother, because her education, she doesn't know what to do, she's worried about him. Then maybe his slicha will be so true, not because he wants something, but because he really sensed that he hurt someone. But because in most of the religious discourse, there's this conception that we can't really hurt God, and that the reason we're saying slicha is because we want to receive. So again, the chuva, the Yom Kippur, our spiritual work, all this work that we're doing, all this energy we're putting, is becoming self-serving again.
You can even forget that you have a mother. You're apologizing to your mother, but you don't even remember that you have a mother. All you know is this is how you get a candy.
Wow, that's another level.
Yeah. So this brings another idea. What exactly is the regret of chuva? What does it mean you're mitchalet? You regret? Why? You didn't enjoy the avera? You ate a non-kosher meat, steak lavan, and it didn't taste good? It did taste good. So what are you regretting? I'll never do it again. I'm so sorry. Why won't you do it again? I think you will.
No, because you realized, maybe you realized you're in a problem now. You will get punished.
So it didn't stop you the first time. Why is it stopping you now? No guarantee that you're going to stop. For the same reason you did it the first time, you'll do it the second time. And whatever didn't stop you the first time is not going to stop you the second time. Unless you choked on it. You had a bad experience. Okay, so you lost interest in that sin because it doesn't work for you. Now, the question is like this. Do you regret what you did, or do you regret who you did it to? What changes? First you sin, and then you don't sin anymore. What changed? The only thing that can possibly change for real, when you did the sin, all you were thinking was, me and that sandwich. Should I? Shouldn't I? Boy, it smells good. I'm hungry. It's only one time. The whole conversation was me and the sandwich. And the sandwich won. But then, after it was all over, you stopped to think, was that forbidden? Was that asur? Yeah. Why is it asur? Because God doesn't want. God doesn't want. All of a sudden, it's not me and the sandwich. All of a sudden, it's a triangle. So it's me and God against the sandwich. That's a very different cheshbon. So if you think, I don't mind eating a non-kosher sandwich, it was good. But he minds. So what did I do? I didn't sin against myself. I sinned against him. And if it really bothers him, I won't do it again. So what changed? Am I a different person than I was before? I am not capable of eating another non-kosher sandwich. Of course I am. But I ate the sandwich because I had no thoughts of God. Now that I think about God, I wouldn't do it to him again. Here's a very practical example. There was a nice Jewish boy named Bernie Madoff, the world's most famous ganef. He stole $50 billion. Haverman.
Nice son.
$50 billion. Now he's sitting in jail. He was sitting in jail. And he's doing chuva. And he says, I stole $50 billion. I have charata. I will never do that again. You'll never do it again? You're such a liar. If you got out of jail and you were in a position where you can steal $50 billion, you won't do it? You're kidding. You'll be more careful not to get caught. But of course you'll do it again. It's $50 billion. But if he tells you, I got a letter from an old woman who was a survivor who went through the concentration camps. She worked hard her whole life. She put together a couple of $1,000s and she invested it with me and I stole it from her. I would never do that to her again. See, that's believable. You're saying something new. When you stole her money, you had no idea who she was, what she was. You were just thinking about the money. So you stole it, which you would do again. But once you find out whose money it was and what kind of difficulty you put her in, you never meant to do that to her in the first place, and you would not do it again. Ki l'chol ha'am bishgaga. You say he stole the money b'mezid. No, it was bishgaga. Because if he had known whose money it was, he wouldn't do it.
So we're making the action interactive. It's not an activity, it's an interactivity. So anything you do, it affects both sides, not just one side. And that's why it's much more meaningful. We can take it into another level, because if you also believe that it doesn't only bother him when you eat the steak lavan, it's not like, yeah, it just bothers me. When you don't eat it, you're actually helping him. You're actually advancing him towards somewhere. So that's even another level.
Like you were saying about coming into the room and seeing your mother crying. Now what are you regretting? You're regretting what you're doing to her. So she's the one who's important. Your own mother? You do this to your own, you make your own mother cry? What is this, a jungle? Never do that to your mother again. That's believable. Sometimes, you talk about avoda pnimi. What did you do to your nefesh eliki? Where did you do that? Your animal soul wanted to eat the sandwich, okay. But this is what you do to your godly soul? The damage, the pain that it caused the godly soul? So sometimes we actually say, what am I doing to myself? What am I doing to myself? Well, who's doing it? Yourself is doing it, not to yourself. It is yourself. No, it's only my animal self. And my animal self will do it again. Gladly. But what am I doing to my godly soul? So there's always the someone. Who? Not what. And that's why you did a big Avera, you did a little Avera, you did 4, no, only 3, no, it was 12. This is petty. It's not what you did, it's who did you do it to.
That's the key for this Yom Kippur. I wish all of us will be able to really comprehend this unthinkable thought that we can actually do something to God. And if we take this little thought to our prayers, to our Yom Kippur, it will be a very different Yom Kippur than we had before. Dror, are there any questions as well from the YouTube? Okay.
So this Yom Kippur should feel very different. We are not worried what next year is going to bring. can't be worse than last year. Although we shouldn't, we shouldn't say that because
How much worse can it get?
that's not what Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur is not a time to be afraid of God because of what God can do to you. Seeing your mother cry is painful, not because now she's going to really get you. Now she's going to throw you out of the house, take you out of the will. No. We're not afraid of what God is going to do, because whatever God does is going to be good. And he will give us a year of life, and he will give us a year of success. No question. What we're afraid of, if you think like a chassid, what you're afraid of is, what am I going to do with that year of life? Because I can mess up a year so bad, like I did last year. I can take a year of life and turn it into a disaster. So what am I worried about? Not whether I will have life. To suspect that God is so mean and so angry and so vicious that he's not going to give me another year of life. That's not nice. It's not nice. And it's not true. He gave you a year of life last year. Well, last year you deserved it.
Just look at all your friends who are not even fasting. They're getting plenty of life.
Yes. So don't make God sound like the bad guy. God is good, and God wants to forgive and does forgive. On Yom Kippur, God forgives you whether you know it or not. You should fast and come to the tefillot, and so that you'll appreciate the forgiveness, but the forgiveness is there. It's Yom Kippur. Itzumo shel Yom Mechaper. So, what are we worried about? Why is it Yamim Noraim? What's Manora? Life. Life is awesome. Life is scary.